Cool. All right, hello everyone. My name is Nick. I work for a company called TrustedSec, you might be familiar with. So funny story, about 4 o'clock yesterday, I was on my way to Cleveland. I live in the eastern side of Pennsylvania, so it's about a 5.5 hour drive. And my plan today was to give an 8-hour class on application security and to a local agency, and that got canceled. So I ended up working on a pen test today and then got asked to do this talk. So bear with me. So this is a sort of a thrown together talk from another talk that I have given before. But basically it's going to be fairly non-technical. I know Dave Kennedy has spoken a few times here, so we do touch on SET a little bit, but I'm sure in previous talks he's probably hit SET to death. But what we're going to focus in on is the actual aspects of a successful social engineering attack from a remote standpoint and also from a face-to-face standpoint, and with some real life experiences too. Just a little bit about me. Senior security consultant at TrustedSec, pen tester, and I like to break things. Head of security at DerbyCon. Highly recommend that you go to DerbyCon in Louisville, Kentucky at the end of September. Great con. We're in our 3rd year. Excellent speaker lineup, and we have some people here that are even part of the organization of that and the staff, so highly recommend it. Active member of the Security B-Sides group too. Security B-Sides started in Las Vegas and has really sprung off into these smaller groups, very similar to what you're doing here, where there's talks set up so that there can be a meeting of the minds and people can learn in a free environment about info security. I'm a network guy for socialengineering.org as well. Team member of the Social Engineering Capture the Flag at DEF CON, and also had the privilege of speaking at DEF CON this year, which was my first time doing that, which was really cool. So we had a privilege of doing that. So first of all, social engineering. There's really nothing new at this point. It's been around since, well, forever. You know, everyone has always tried to manipulate other individuals using different things. It includes disguise, deception, or pretext to make something believable. So we have a defined goal. We want to appear as someone or something to get something that we desire or what our goal is. And really, when you master that, we can gain access to really anything we want, whether it be electronic, physical, or what have you. And really nowadays, when you couple it with like the social engineering toolkit and other forms of technology, it's extremely powerful. So just a quick introduction. So right now, as we know, most of us we know in this room know that SE is by far the easiest way to gain access into a company. It's being used by hacker groups all over the place in order to gain access to corporations, because as far as from a perimeter standpoint, organizations are actually doing much better. But from a human standpoint and from a security awareness standpoint, really there's a failure on it. If you're able to do it, it depends on your comfort level and your ability to communicate, especially if you're doing it in person. Now, I put a picture of Mr. Bean in there. I don't know if you most likely know who Mr. Bean is. I don't know if you've really noticed how many different faces this dude can actually do, but he has such a masterful way of actually manipulating his face, and you know exactly what he's thinking. Like the original Mr. Bean show had very little dialogue. It was just him making faces, really. That's almost what the skill that you need to harness when you're doing face-to-face SE. You need to communicate very well. I'm not saying you need to communicate like Mr. Bean, but you get the point. So it works because we're humans. We inherently want to trust one another. We don't want to be sitting next to someone and think that, well, they're going to rip me off. You know, we may have a certain level of paranoia, but for the most part, we want to trust one another. And we want to do that until they actually prove us wrong. And then we know that we can't trust them. But overall, our nature is to be trustworthy, especially when we're used to seeing a particular baseline of communication, as we'll get into. So how can we use this in pen testing? So this talk is really going to focus on how we've used this to run penetration tests, and then a small bit on how you can actually defend against it too, because I know we have a wide array of different individuals, and people are on the defensive end, and also perhaps we have some pen testers here. So we're going to touch on two areas. Remotely, we're going to talk about mainly the email and the spear phishing side of it. We're not going to touch too much on over the phone right now just because of time. And then the in-person, face-to-face. And in both of these, we're going to do real-life examples of actually what we have done as a company and what we've actually performed and how we got to that point to actually get to our goals. So the first one, remote social engineering. Creating a successful spear phish attack. Now, a lot of times, for the most part, spear phishing is we're actually going to gain access to an internal system. But this one, as you'll see, we're actually, our main goal is to harvest credentials. So just so we don't get those two things confused. But this obviously could be manipulated to gain an outside shell. And if you're interested in an excellent talk, check out whenever our DEF CON talks are posted. The Dirty South talk at DEF CON this year, whenever the videos come out. So I broke this up into different phases. So in SE, we have phase one, the planning and info gathering phase, which really is the most important phase. We'll get into this a little bit later, but how many of us have gotten the DHL, you have a package for you email, and you need to click this link in order to get this package to you. Obviously there's no thought put into that. So in the intelligence gathering phase, what we're doing is we're getting specific information about that company. What's important? Well, employee information, email address, what particular function those people, that particular person rather, plays, their role in the company, their external footprint. We want to know what kind of portal sites they're used to seeing. Do they use Outlook Web Access? Do they use a customized front end for a Cisco VPN? Do they use something for viewing their payroll stubs or HR? Sites that employees are used to seeing and using. We're looking for those specific types of things. And we'll talk a little bit more about how important that really is later. Because just like when we get those fake DHL emails, it's out of the ordinary for us. We don't get those all the time, and especially since DHL, I don't even think delivers domestically in the States anymore. I think they're overseas now, but I could be mistaken. And what can we use for that? So there's a lot of open source intelligence gathering tools, and if you've ever done this, you know that there's a long list. So there's many more than these, but these are just some of the highlights. Google hacking is by far probably one of the best methods of gathering information about a company. Look into the Google hacking database that's on exploit-db.com, or .org rather. Look at all the different switches that are actually embedded into Google that you can search, like site:google.com, and then something in quotes to look for something specifically only on that site. ReconNG. It's a full-featured web reconnaissance tool. Tim Tomes is the, and this is actually, as you can see, this was from a different talk. He had a talk later that day. Tim Tomes is the creator of that, and he's consistently updating that tool. Really, really great tool. I suggest you check in that. It's recon-ng.com. Threat Agent, built by a gentleman named Marcus G. Carey. Excellent tool. Highly recommend checking out even the demo of it. What he has done is he's developed a very nice user-friendly interface for fingerprinting an entire company's domain. So you go in to their particular function called drone, and say you want to look at, just as an example, well, we'll keep google.com as the domain of choice. We type in google.com. What it's going to do is it's going to cross-reference that domain with its external footprint, all the servers that are listed, all the IP addresses, the whois information that relates to those IP addresses. It's going to cross-reference email addresses as well. So google.com is probably not the best example for that, but you get the gist. It's going to find email addresses from LinkedIn. It's going to use Jigsaw as well. It's going to use many other tools so that you can actually develop an entire SE campaign. There's a lot of other tools related to that, and he's consistently updating that as well. So I highly recommend that. And even the pay service is very, very affordable. So we don't get anything for hawking us, by the way, so you don't think that I'm trying to sell that. I like the tool. It takes a lot of the legwork out of it. Does it replace everything? No, it doesn't replace it. Foca, Maltego, the Harvester, and many other ones. Like I said, Jigsaw, any type of tools that are considered open source intelligent gathering tools or OSINT tools. And that's going to allow us to get information on our target. So we want to define our goals based on the information gathered, because it's going to be different. So this all goes back to we're customizing an attack based on the company that we're going after. Do we want to do credential harvesting? Is that possible? Does the company itself have a lot of portals that they use their domain credentials to log into? We might want to do that. If that's not an option, do we want to try exploit payload delivery? Or maybe even couple them together and use them to, both. And then we want to look at the probability of success. Because there might be a lot of portals where they could actually log in to, but maybe based on the size of the company, which I think I bring out in the next slide, we might not want to do that because it might raise red flags. So we want to base our goals on the information that's gathered. So phase 2, the pretext. So pretexting, textbook definition, is defined as the act of creating an invented scenario to persuade a targeted victim to release information or perform some action. So that could be clicking on a link. It could be giving us some information over the phone. It could be allowing us into a section of a building that we're not supposed to be in. So we're pretexting ourselves. You know, what are we going to act as? We can liken this to really being an actor. And good information gathering can really make or break a pretext. If let's say we're looking at a manufacturing company, and our pretext is something to do with health insurance or something like that, it's probably going to have a low probability of success. Or a company that's not used to seeing outside vendors just walk in, and you come in as a vendor, it's not going to work. So there's a lot of thought and planning that actually goes into that. We want to research different scenarios that would be believable or something that would not be out of the ordinary to receive. So that's highly, highly important. And along with the pretext, what is believable? So we go back to talking about that DHL email. So first one, we receive an email from American Airways. It needs you to click on this link in order to confirm your flight ASAP. Sound believable? Yeah, no. First of all, there's no American Airways. Second one, FedEx needs you to confirm an address for a package that they have made numerous attempts to deliver. Again, goes back to our DHL scenario. Not really. How about you receive an email from your system administrator that says you need to click a link to reset your password? Now, this last one's sort of an iffy one because of user education, some would fall for that. But from a professional standpoint, from actually doing a actual pen test using a fish, or a spearfish, we wouldn't use that. But none of the above really are that believable. Go ahead.
Sure, but people, it's a lot of large numbers. People fall for those three examples all the time.
Exactly. But I'm speaking from the goal of a standpoint of a pen tester. I want to give the true value of the pen test to the person who has commissioned us to do the test, and that's in the report. So I want to make dang sure that I have a good pretext that I get the most hits on. So that's why, can we set up a quick fish that and send it out to, like, say 1,500 people at a company and have a few click on it? Yes, we can. But is that really our goal? No. And I'll get into that a little later because it gets into like sort of the ethics area as far as making people or not making people feel victimized. So making it believable. What makes it really believable for your specific target is the research based on that specific target. How large is the company? That can really change how you would actually attack that company. What industry are they involved in? Are they in healthcare? Are they in some type of insurance, manufacturing, industrial? and what have you. The more research you do, you'll be less likely to come off as this guy, the sleazy car salesman, because that's going to be noticed a mile away. So how can we make it believable? Well, each attack should be unique and rolled out in small-scale phases still. So really, if we think about it, we only really need one person with the correct level of access to actually make a successful phishing attack work. Emails should contain proper company lingo, perhaps even using wording from an employee handbook. And this goes back to our information gathering phase. It is amazing how many employee handbooks, especially for larger corporations, are available online. And the example that I'll show you, we actually did find that. So mimicking wording is very, very important. Email signatures, which is actually really easy to get. Really all you need to do is just email somebody within the company, and you'll get an email signature back, especially with like the little security disclaimer at the bottom. And email address that we can send and receive from, we're going to need as well. So as we talk about this, we're going to register a domain with a similar naming convention, such as webmail. Let's say this is the actual real website, webmail.xyz.com. We're going to try to register webmail-xyz.com. Okay? And we'll get into a real example of the attack here after phase 3. So we want to put it all together again here. Specifically craft an email to entice the user to click on it. And we want to, in this case, we want to actually appear that it's coming from a company source. We have done engagements in the past where actually they prefer us not to appear to come from an internal source. But for our example, we're actually going to appear like we actually did come from the company. We're going to design a specific website that resembles the graphics, the look, and the feel that the company is actually familiar with seeing. Something that's not out of the ordinary. Something with their company logo, their colors, their fonts, and that all comes with research. We're going to register that domain that I spoke about. And then we're going to select targets based on what our goal is of the actual attack. And then we're going to execute the attack. So what's our example here? So for our example company is going to be XYZ Company. This particular company is a Fortune 500 health insurance company. Our goal is to harvest credentials. And then we're going to leverage VPN access. Because during our information gathering phase, we found that there are actually 4 or 5 VPN portals that allow us to click on different parts of their environment and different subdomains that we can mimic. So really, we just need some good credentials. And so as not to raise any red flags, we decided not to include an exploit payload, even though we could have. But just for this example and for the brevity of this talk, we are only going to do the credential harvesting. Because of our open source intelligence gathering phase, we realized that most of the company are familiar with a certain compliancy that you can probably think of, which starts with HIP and ends with A. And that's what we're going to do. So that's our main goal. Goals. So we want to become XYZ Company. How do we do that? Well, we've discovered a web portal located at employeeportal.xyz.com. We also have realized that they use the same type of web template, let's say WordPress or some other very, very basic HTML, throughout their web portals. We discover that the domain compliance-xyz.com is available. We have used this on so many engagements, it is amazing. When we're posing as the actual company, no one notices that this is not the same as this at all. And it's amazing how many little bags of tricks we have, domains we have at our disposal that I hope we get to use again at some point. But it's actually very easy to find something. So that's what we've decided to do. Compliance-xyz.com. So we register compliance-xyz.com as a domain. DNSsimple.com is a really, really great source to do this. Really nice interface to manage all your domains. You can purchase an SSL cert tied to a particular, or if you do a wildcard, like asterisk dot whatever your domain is, it's $20. If you want to narrow it down to like www or internet dot or whatever, it's a little bit more. I think it's like 120 or something. Really, really simple and really, really fast. So dnssimple.com seems to work very well for us. We register a Gmail account using Google Docs, which they actually are kind enough to give you a free account for, I think it's 30 days. And we can actually tie in the MX records from our compliance-xyz.com to our Google app account. So we can actually send emails without doing any type of spoofing directly from this. So we've basically created our own company. So we've set up compliance at compliance-xyz.com as an email address. And we now own this domain, and we can freely send and receive information. So one thing that's nice about having this ability is we're not just trying to send out emails. We want to almost do, depending on the scope of the engagement, we want it to become a long con. So if we want to target, say, 10 people, and one person comes back and says, hey, I don't understand, I want to be at the other end, and I want to respond, because I want to keep this as real as possible. And we have done that in the past. So it's good to have a email address that you can actually respond from. Yes?
Typo or test? XYZ.com, XZY.com.
Typo.
Third line.
Yep. Typo. Welcome to my world. I'm Captain Typo. So this is why we have people check our grammar. But so there we go. So first of all, crafting the phishing email. And this is actually an email that I did put together, highly sanitized to protect the innocent. And this is basically what it says. So good afternoon. And in blue, what we did was we inserted a quote from the CEO from the latest employee handbook. In short, helping establish the validity of the email source. In essence, basically what it said, thank you so much for your valued service over such and such year. We are looking forward, in a synergistic and a lot of type of, that type of wording, that people were used to seeing. And most likely, if that was a quote from the CEO, the employees as a whole were probably used to seeing the type of verbiage that he used, or at least his secretary wrote for him. So here's our fish. So it says our compliance, because I know it's a little small back there. So our compliance with government regulations has been and continues to be a main focus in harmony with our code of business conduct. This allows our company to always provide the highest level of customer support. The insert compliancy regulation rule strikes a balance that permits important uses of information while protecting the privacy of people who seek care and healing. Blah, 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 blah. At times, the insert compliancy regulation rule here is amended, which requires each employee to review and accept the changes to maintain our company's compliance as a health insurance provider. As of March 1st, 2013, an amendment has been made to insert compliancy rule. It is mandatory for all employees to follow the provided link, log on using your domain credentials, review the amendment thoroughly, and accept the agreement. Big red letters, you are required to accept this amendment within 24 hours of receiving this email. However, please note, not all employees will receive this notice at the same time, just in case Bob in one cubicle gets it and Sally in the other cubicle doesn't. We covered our bases there. And then further notices will be distributed throughout the week, blah, blah, blah. And then we actually inserted a link to the actual document on the main company site, the actual employee document, which stated about how that company needed to stay compliant and that it was the employee's responsibility to follow all compliancy rules. So pretty heavy hitting, actually. So that was our email, and not in so much short, and here's the rest of it here. Please follow the link and review and accept the amendment. Thank you for your prompt attention and commitment to protecting our most valuable asset, the integrity of our company. And then we have our signed signature, and then the confidentiality notice is actually was copied from what they use. Now, what about the website? Now, There's really very little artistry involved in doing this. Actually, the site that we used was very simple. It was a front end they had changed around for a Cisco VPN. Like I said, we're not going to get too technical on this, but I'll run through real quick. Some of the screenshots I have are from a couple of versions ago of SET, but it's basically the same options. If you need a little bit more guidance after, I can show you. But what we'll do is we'll clone a real site. We'll include a credential harvester, and then we'll redirect it back to the legitimate site. And then I'll explain how we're doing it. So this is the site that we actually came across. Oversimplified, obviously. So XYZ Company employee, our company employee access portal. So they're to enter in their username and password. So obviously most of you probably know about SET. It's available in Kali or directly from TrustedSec. Has a ton of features. Actually, I think on the way here I noticed that Dave was probably sitting in an airport and fixed a few things about that. He fixed something with RID enum as well. But depending on what part of the day it's the version of SET is out, because that's Dave's baby. But we're proud of it. Now, by default, if you have used the social engineering toolkit, it has a built-in web server, Python web server. But for this, we're actually going to use Apache, and that's actually preferable because what that allows us to do is actually modify the site. Now, by default, when you clone a site, it will actually go clone the site, put in whatever payload you want to do, multiple payloads. It launches the web server in Python and then starts your listener or your handler in Metasploit. But because what we want to do, as I'll get in, we want to modify the site. We're going to use Apache. And actually, you can use Apache as well, even if it's you're not going to modify the site. I just think it's a little bit more robust, and then everything doesn't die if, say, SET dies. So that's actually easy to set underneath the SET directory config/set_config. Look for Apache server. Change that from off to on. So to clone the site, as you can see, this is version 5. We're going to select 1 for social engineering attacks, and then 2 for website attack vectors. And we're going to, for this engagement, we're selecting credential harvester. Now we would actually, if we wanted to, we could do a multi-attack method where we could do credential harvesting, and we could also put in a Java applet attack method, which the one that is in the most updated version works like a champ, especially if you have a signed jar that's completely legitimate, which comes in really handy. So we're going to choose the credential harvester, and then we're going to go to site cloner. Now with this option, we have the option of using some of the web templates, real basic ones. There's Gmail, just a generic Java, Yahoo I think is in there, and also a custom import. If we've already done a wget or a curl of a website, we could use that. But we're going to choose site cloner. And then we enter, we go through, we enter in the employeeportal.xyz.com. It goes through, and it's going to pull that site down, and it's going to put the files into our var ww. And this is all run in Kali, by the way, but if you like to just install SET in any type of Linux flavor, you can do that as well. And then what we want to do is enter the external IP where the creds will actually post to as well. So if you have a secondary system that you want those credentials to post to, you can do that. And then the address of the site we'd like to clone, which those should be switched. So then we have the contents of var ww. As you can see, it added the index.html, and it added this file post.php, and it also puts in this harvester and then a timestamp. The harvester file is actually where all the credentials are actually going to be put in. So in real time, really, we could just keep doing a cat harvester on that file, as people are putting in their credentials and they actually list down. There's actually even some tweaks in there where you can put in originating IPs and things like that. But there's a lot of little tweaks on it that you can do. Any extra modifications that we want to do. So in this area, we want to do some extra modifications to match our pretext. Now, by default, that little post.php, what it does, it harvests those credentials, and then it just forwards the user to the original site. Now, to follow our pretext, that wouldn't really make a lot of sense to them, because what they would see is they'd be going to this compliance-xyz.com. They put their credentials in, and then all of a sudden it would put them over to their employee portal and just give them a login and password. That might raise some red flags. That's not what we want to happen. So what we want to do is we modify this post.php to customize it to go to a secondary location. And I just put an enter location here. So what we would do is we would create a different maybe index.2 or acceptance.html. So after they log in, it looks like everything has went fine. They've logged in, their credentials took, and then they're brought up to that acceptance page. And that's what we did. We created an acceptance page. So we actually followed through right to the letter of what they were supposed to do. We even made up a fake little amendment to those compliancy rules. We thanked the user for complying, and then after they clicked submit, then we forwarded them back to their main company website. No red flags raised at all. It looked like they did their job. They logged in, they read it, they clicked. They most likely didn't read it. Probably scrolled to the bottom and clicked the little checkbox and hit submit. But who cares? And then it removes the chance of the user feeling victimized as well, because that's one goal that we as pen testers really, we don't want to victimize anybody or really single anyone out as far as that. So after we have this all together, it's time to launch the attack. First thing, obviously, what you want to do is you want to test your web server. You want to make sure that your DNS is working. Your point of contact at the company, if when you're doing, well, of course you're doing this for legitimate purposes, but your legitimate point of contact at the company, send them a test email. This has actually burned me once without doing that, and for some reason their spam filter was blocking everything from Gmail, so that really messed up things. Just by going back to the email, actually you can use other services as well. I think Windows Live.com, I think as well, will you can transfer an MX record to them as well. So there are other options as well, or even setting up your own email server. However, spam filters may pick that up because they're not coming from a recognized source. So send test emails to yourself, to a point of contact at the company, and then launch. So looking back at what we did. So everything that we did was attained through open source intelligence gathering. We did not hack anything to get this information. It was not attained through any nefarious ways. No exploits. We focused just on harvesting our credentials, and we even had our site signed with a legitimate SSL certificate, because everyone knows that if you see that little padlock, it's legitimate, right? And all your data is just spot on, perfect, right?
How often do you run into targets where they're using EV certs?
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
How often do you run into targets where they're using EV certs?
Not too much, actually, but we could talk after. Yeah, actually, not yet, but we could talk after about that. So, real world results. Because of this, we gained domain administrative privileges. What had happened was one of the individuals that actually clicked and we got their credentials, we logged in and it turned out that they were one of the telecom administrators. They had a specific local admin on a single machine, not domain administrative privileges, but because we had access into that machine, we did a reverse interpreter on his machine. We did a token negotiation with domain administrator privileges, and we gained domain admin. And because of that, we had full access to all the internal machines. VPN was two-factor, but Outlook Web Access was not, because one of the individuals actually that fell for this was I believe one of the high-end marketing directors. So she had some interesting things in her email. But this was interesting. So the VPN was two-factor, but we were hospitably granted due to user ignorance. The two-factor authentication that was in use was a PIN that they had to type in when they received the phone call. and she just did it. So that was nice of her to do that. So, but it was funny because we didn't really even need this because the one person that we actually gained access from, actually, we were able to leverage. So some cautions and reminders when we're putting all this together. One size does not fit all, and that goes back to the research end of it. You know, we're not going to reuse this attack unless the company really, you know, resembles that almost to a T. Everything's unique, and again, you never feel someone, never leave someone feeling victimized. That is, I can't stress that enough, because we're the good guys. You know, we're trying to protect them, and we actually even go as far as we don't put people's names or user names in reports, because we feel as a company that the company as a whole that we're actually testing is responsible for that, and user awareness actually should be you know, their responsibility. So any questions on the phishing aspect of it so far? Yes?
What was your typical success rate?
It varies. We have had ones where we've had 100% success rate, and we've had some where we've had 37% success rate. This particular one was about a 37 because it was a small amount of people that we actually targeted, and because of that VPN two-factor that we didn't know about until we logged in with a legitimate user account. So that was the one thing that we sort of failed on, but we wouldn't have known unless we had valid credentials. But when we're doing reverse shells and actually prepackaging, say, a Java applet with PowerShell payload, it's a very high ratio. You know, and that's because we want to make it believable. You know, we become what we're trying to do. We're not just, you know, throwing out a rinky-dink fish here. Say, hey, I'm American Airways. Click on me. Yes?
When you're doing this for a company, white hat
Mm-hmm.
kind of work, how much of the company's management or IT staff do you guys recommend, or do you find that you generally have to give some idea of what's going on? The reason I ask, I don't do pen testing. The only pen test I've ever been involved in is the senior management of
Mm-hmm.
the IT department allowed this group in as an insider attack, basically. So they sent out an email inside. So 5:30 a.m. the email goes out. 6 a.m. I show up at my desk, block the account, send out a mass email that says don't respond, and immediately have a bunch of people in my office yelling at me for blocking out the account.
Yeah, it's
Penetration test.
yeah. They shouldn't have done that.
You know,
Yeah.
management said, Grant, you did your
Yeah,
job well.
exactly.
The pen tester said you screwed up everything for us. So obviously this is different. You're coming at it from a different perspective, but do you find there's a certain amount that you need to notify, or do you recommend notifying?
Our personal opinion is that we want only the people that need to know, because we want to be able to accurately report to management when somebody such as yourself actually stops us. Just a week and a half ago, I was doing a purely phone social engineer. I had 4 or 5 different pretexts, and on one call, I made it all the way to an IT manager. Actually, no, he was head of development, and he paused for a little while, and we suddenly got disconnected. So I called him back, and he said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't give you that information." I hung up. Well, it turns out he recognized it as an SE. One person in the company. We were successful in all the other ones, but it was an attaboy to them. And how we handle that situation, I mean, in your situation, it would be a little bit difficult because if you send a mass email out, that pretty much kills the pen test. What this gentleman did was he went to a superior who happened to be our point of contact. And he just said, "Great, good job, just keep it hush-hush, let him finish the test." But generally, we really prefer to go in completely dark or have the company be completely dark, because once it's known, I mean, it changes the test. I mean, when people's guards are up, I mean, you're not getting the value of a true penetration test. You know, it goes for a network penetration test too. Especially like an external. You know, we generally give the IP addresses or the originating IP addresses to those who need to know. But if you're setting up a TCP dump and filtering out our IP addresses and watching everything that we do, and then changing ACLs on the fly to block us, that sort of taints the test. So, good job catching it, and we appreciate that because our main goal is to help people be more secure. We're not sitting back and laughing at people because they fell for it, and that's why we want to make something that's very, very realistic when we do these phishes.
So speaking as a security person for a large company, from the other side of their perspective, yeah, I don't want everybody to know, or even a lot of people. I may have to give some senior managers a time frame. Something will happen between this date and that date, but not even necessarily giving them the details.
Yeah.
Because you know how you keep a secret that somebody else knows? Kill them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The frustrating part of that experience was that after having explained to me their goal was to see how many responses they could get to this email. And of course they failed at their goal because an administrator stepped in and stopped that and had no idea what was going on. So I guess it's what their goal was.
But the question is, does that fall underneath that would fall underneath your normal routine of your job, right?
I felt it was my job description,
Yeah.
so.
So you should have been let in on the test then.
Or,
Yeah.
rather than yelling at you or being pissed off, they should have given you a gift card to Starbucks or something and said, hey, great job.
Well, what you do in a scenario like that is you give it maybe 3-6 months and just try again, or try a different tactic. I mean, there's phone SE, there's in-person SE, there's phishing, there's however, I mean, there's different tactics where you can test security awareness.
I can see the value, and I guess my point was, as you were saying, you want to see, does a sysadmin stop you? Does a user call and something happens?
Yeah.
And so if your goal is to find out exactly where in the company it gets stopped, that's great. If your goal is something different, if your goal is to actually be testing the employees themselves, then there may be a larger group that you need to notify that you wouldn't want to in another situation.
And that would happen just from when our company performs a penetration test, our pre-engagement phase handles that, and we leave it to the company for them internally to decide who actually needs to be notified, because at the end of the day they're responsible for that. But we haven't run into that too much actually. That one on the phone the other day was probably one of the first I got shot down on the phone. Especially when you get somebody in the phone and you develop a rapport, you don't get shut down that much. So, yeah, but good question. But for the most part, we prefer to have very little internal knowledge because the more people that know about it, the more likely they're going to put up shields where there shouldn't be shields. So.
I think that goes back to one of his original points. They're running small targeted attacks, so they don't raise the red flag when you stop.
Yep. Yeah, actually, that's a great point. So the magic number, or the magic maximum number, when we're sending out phishing emails, is 13. Never send out more than 13 emails at a time. Actually, well, we'll start with 3, see what happens. Maybe up to 5, but we never want to raise alarm. And that's why in that email, our part of our pretext, or multiple pretexts, as you can see, there's multiple aspects of it, was not everyone in the company is going to receive this at the same time. So you got to sit back and you got to really think about, from their standpoint, someone's sitting in the cubicle, they come in on Monday morning, which actually that brings up another point about the timing, but so they come in, they have an email, it's like, hey, Sally, did you get this? No. But it says, it says right there, not everyone's supposed to get it. Timing is actually really good. If you just touch on that real quick. We found that Friday afternoons, we're actually Friday together. Not a great time to run phishing campaigns. Monday through Wednesday are really good times to run that. Monday is actually probably one of the best if you can do it, from my personal opinion, not from a company opinion, just because when you come in from a weekend, you got emails sitting there and you just want to go through. But again, we're only targeting 3, 5, 6, up to 13 at a time. But our end goal is we want people to click on it. So, yes?
So
substantial size and depending on how legitimate the campaign looks, you're not going to get your response rate to 0. I mean, I'm looking at the company's never going to reach that magic 0 number with a very good-looking phishing campaign. So, I mean, what's your goal or recommendation to a business? Do they really try to...
For a small company?
Well, I guess more for a large company, but I mean, it's just, I work for a large company,
Okay.
and we're not going to get down to 0. Is the goal to get down to close to 0 for people with privileged access?
Yeah, okay, so that's actually a great question. Okay, so when we're doing this type of penetration test, this is an aspect of penetration testing. This is not, hey, get an SE phish pen test and you're going to be secure. Because you got to think about it, security is layered. We all know that. Are you going to have a 0% success ratio on a phish or an SE? No, never. Sorry. Unless the person's not trying. You're going to get some sort of response from it. Unless you're maybe a house of maybe 10 employees and they're really, really paranoid. And they all chat and they all know each other, maybe not. But what we like to do is we like to couple in our reverse interpreter payload. Because then that allows us to check your egress filtering as well. So on the first, in the example here, what we're testing is, okay, what's the gullibility or what's the lack of security awareness from a user standpoint? Okay, well, you got a problem here. But let's say we couple that with a Java exploit or a PowerShell exploit, and we are able to get multiple reverse shells. Then there's a problem with your egress filtering. But what if we have our interpreter shell, but we can't get a reverse shell? Or we have the payload, but we can't get a reverse shell. That means that you have something that is detecting and preventing something from happening. So you call somebody up in HR, and this is actually the one phone SE that I did last week. I was successful with 6 individuals, and I got 1 shell. One of the individuals that I was working with, I convinced him that I was from a reputable firm that rates corporations on their performance. And I had this fake page from that site, and I was working on an editorial for our 2014 top 20 in their field. And to get it rolling, all he needed to do was go and click run on the page, and it'll take you maybe a minute to 2 just to get the ball rolling. And this is normally how we get our foot in the door so we can see if you actually qualify for that. I knew that it wasn't going to pop anything up. I know Java box would pop up and you say allow run. No shell. And then my secondary backup pretext was, oh, well, we're probably having some issues with it. Are there any other systems that you could run this on? He walked around to probably about 10 systems and clicked run. Not 1 shell, because they were in this Citrix environment and their egress filtering was so that we could not actually penetrate out. And we might actually find a little bug that we need to fix with part of the interpreter payload. But there was 1 shell because he found a laptop that was sitting that was not part of the Citrix environment. And lo and behold, we have a shell on their main domain. If you get somebody to actually walk around and do your work for you. So, but in an instance, I mean, they did very, very well with their egress filtering. So it's a layered approach. This is just an example of how you could, or a template of how you could set up a phish. The different guidelines that you can have. So, okay, good. We've been actually really fortunate with the all ports, interpreter all ports. So, we're 21, 25, 53, 80, 80, 443, 80, No. Yeah. It's the all port option in set, which is interesting. On this engagement, we only got it on 53, which was interesting. That's probably actually what stopped us on another engagement that I'll not get into. But yes. So, all right, cool. I don't want to take up all the time here, but go ahead. One more.
On the other end of the sysadmin scale, forwarded it to everybody in the division. And, they sent out 40, they got over 100 responses.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, yeah. And see, that all comes down to believability. You know, it's if there's some sort of even a glimmer of doubt, you know, that person would have never have done that. So whoever ran that fish, kudos. I mean, they did the research, unless that guy was just a dunce. I'm not sure, but it sounds like they did their work. So, and I can answer some more questions about that if you wanted to after. But I want to get into the face-to-face end of it. We also do physical penetration testing too. And obviously, we carry a lot of the same steps, actually, that we use in a phishing SE engagement with a face-to-face or a physical social engineering. Now, let's play a game. I'm going to play this little game. I'm going to put up a picture of a person, and you just yell out if you would trust this person or you would not trust this person. Okay? Real quick. Real quick. Actually. Okay. How about this guy?
Don't trust me.
Sarah can tell what kind of person you are. Can we trust this guy? What about this guy?
No.
Heck no. We do not trust salespeople whatsoever. You might have seen this in a Dave slide before.
Don't trust.
Never trust a
Trust.
baby.
Her?
Don't trust.
Wow.
Wow, man.
That's a trust.
He's a mythic.
How about her?
Don't trust. Why?
How about her?
No.
Wait, why would, for the ones that you say trust,
We'll get into it.
why?
I'm interested to see what we get from this.
No trust.
She looks like a derby girl, so I trust her. If I just kicked that dude in the balls.
Yeah. No trust. All right, so why? All right, so women have a 90% more likelihood than men to be successful in SE. And this is a proven study. No matter the demeanor, the friendliness, or the pushiness, they actually have a 90% more likelihood to be successful. And they really do. Actually, this year's social engineering capture the flag at DEF CON was won by a girl, a woman, by like 200 points from number 2. She did phenomenal. Really nice girl named Lily. Kids have a 97% more likelihood than women to be successful in SE. So if you can ever enlist a kid and not have child labor laws on your case, get a kid to do some SE for you. But SE in general has around an 84.3% success rate. So why? Because we favor to trust. We want to trust people, as I said before. It's just our human nature. And unless you're this guy here, you hate confrontation. The majority of people really don't want to upset people, especially customers or people who are of authority or who are giving some type of service. And we'll get into that a little bit later. And that's what works and what's believable. So,
Even outrageous works.
sorry?
Even outrageous can work.
Oh, well, you'll see.
At Starbucks, at DEF CON,
Mhm.
I had a reporter from Forbes going. I told her, and we were trying to think of something believable, and I was like, the hell with it. I'm going to just start making crap up. And so I broke my leg. I had a bunch of metal implanted. So I showed her the scar, and I said, yeah, I had this device implanted in my leg. It's running Yasiger and some other stuff. And right now, I'm capturing all the credentials of everybody connected to Wi-Fi here. And where I lost it was, I started to tell her how it was powered by the muscles in my leg, and I just started cracking up.
Why was that believable to her?
Because she was at a hacker conference looking for stories about hackers.
And what was her level of education? Based on what you
Actually,
talked about?
fairly good.
Okay. Not too high. She
What
picked up
include
for
all the
that.
risk attacks, like body implant hacking?
Yeah, so with social engineering from a physical aspect, we still have our pretext, okay? Our disguise, our identity, and really our attack, okay? We need to be convincing, and we really need to become that person. If you've caught the latest social-engineer.org podcast, which if you haven't checked that out, check it out. They interviewed Lily, who won the SECTF this year, and she highlighted the fact of method acting and really becoming the role. And that really actually works, because if you don't believe your pretext, people are going to pick up on that. Like if you don't believe you're so-and-so, then it just doesn't work as well unless you get somebody really gullible, like that reporter. You want to develop an understanding for the company you're targeting. Again, just like our phish, we want to understand who we're going into. Things that could actually stop you. What could happen? Well, small companies are very rough because they're tight shops. They know each other, so very hard to get in. These are the ones that perhaps maybe you could piggyback into, and it doesn't require a huge pretext to get in. If the company has a very strong security awareness training program, it would make it more challenging and difficult, but never really impossible. So we got to keep that in mind. So with the same steps as before, we want to look online for the company. We want to use open source intelligence gathering to find the best route into the company. And we want to look at different scenarios that will actually work and make it a believable attack. So our attack this time is on ABC Company. Now, our target is a large retailer with several facilities nationwide, warehouse facilities, areas where they store large amounts and perhaps even in the billions of dollars of merchandise and electronic merchandise. Our goal of this attack is to acquire pictures inside the warehouse. That's our flag that we're going to capture. Okay, it's not to remove anything. It's not to plant any USB keys. So we're going to keep it real simple, just to get pictures inside, because there's a zero tolerance for cell phones, for cameras. These facilities are very, very strict on this. During our OSINT gathering, we realized that most of the warehouses are locked down really tight. I mean, really tight. We're talking man traps, the use of RFID badges, which is not unheard of. Employees cannot bring their cell phones, MP3 players, and metal detectors are actually used upon exit. So very, very strict. And this actually is a real life scenario as well. This is an actual retailer that uses this. What will not work? Well, because of the last slide, we know we can't tailgate. Man traps are used to prevent this. The RFID badges that are accessed or in use are the type where they have a shield on them. So it would be overly complicated to maybe see someone off-site to try to scan that. And to be honest, once you go through, you'll probably recognize as you don't belong there. And then, of course, employees are searched. What about posing as a visitor from another location? Because they have many locations all over the place. Well, they have a central employee database. So even if you walked in there and said, hey, I forgot my badge, can you look at my name? They're going to have a picture of you. So that's not going to work. And breaking and entering is completely out of scope of this test. What will work? Well, let's think. Maybe an outside service provider. Garbage collection, a delivery person, maybe food service. How about a safety inspector or a fire inspector? These might work. So what's our pretext one that we focused in on? First pretext, safety inspector. We're going to go in following up on a complaint, and in some areas we're actually going to follow up on a fire extinguisher inspection. Okay? The tools, what do we need to perform this? Just like before with the phish, we needed our website, we needed our DNS, our SSL cert, and what have you. We need a uniform. This is invaluable in a physical SE, a clipboard, and some type of ID or badge, to mimic who we're going in as. Number two, trash removal service. Trash compactor inspection we actually decided to go with. And I think it's on the next slide. We actually found out a couple slides from here, we found out that the same waste management company was used throughout the entire corporation. Tools we need: uniform with embroidered name, because it's more of a blue-collar job, so they're going to have an embroidered name. A hat, clipboard, again, and a safety vest, because that's a very powerful thing as well. So these are our two, but why these two? Well, Pretext 1, we came across some articles where company ABC was publicly known to have safety violations and bad PR, and they're very sensitive to this issue. Unsafe work conditions, things that didn't really add up to a safe working environment. The organization that we were coming in as was an authoritative organization. People respect that organization. And an unannounced visit is not abnormal. Actually, who we posed as is they do not have to announce their visit at all. What about 2? As I said, the same trash removal. They have standard uniforms across the board, so it was easily, we could find a uniform that looked like that. And to be honest, who really notices a trash compactor guy, especially when everyone who works in the warehouse has the same safety vest as you're coming in as? There's no I in SE. Now, the reason we have 2 pretexts here is because it's always best to have a team. Not saying that you always need to have a team. For instance, with phone SEs and with fish SEs, you don't really need to have a team for the most part. But for a physical one, especially in a large-scale test, it's good to have a backup pretext. For instance, you go in as an individual, and they start checking into you, and they want to check on you. You have a fake business card with a number on it. You have a secondary person who's posing as your manager, supervisor, or some coworker that can actually validate your identification and that you're supposed to be there. So that's an important aspect too of physical. So the real world results. Using variations of these techniques, we had 100% success ratio. And this was out of, I believe, about 8 locations. We used both pretexts, and they both worked. The secondary pretext that I just spoke about, we did have to use that at one location, where they did get a little